third annual No Regrets Rumble is in the books, and we have no time to waste. Loaded is on the air. Let's get things going. Here's a man who was part of No Regrets last night. His second night here in Defiant for Manchester's own CJ Banks.
And what an opportunity for one CJ Banks to make a huge impact here in Defiant.
The opening contest of Loaded in its singles bout, set for one fall. And it has a 20-minute time limit. Going to the ring at this time, wrestling out of Scotland, England, and weighing tonight, 182 pounds, CJ Banks.
CJ Banks about to have his singles debut here in Defiant, and what a challenge he's got for himself against a former world champion.
He has, but look at the confidence that CJ Banks brings to the ring with him. The people here, they're not digging it, but CJ Banks, he could leave here with a massive victory. Think what this would do for the career of that man if he defeated the prestigious one.
Certainly not lacking self-confidence, but that is also true of his opponent.
It always is.
His opponent, hailing from Edinburgh, Scotland, and weighing tonight, 228 pounds, he is the prestigious one,
Hendry obviously with a point to prove given what happened in the No Regrets Rumble last night. You can see the determination on the face of the prestigious one.
And look at this, straight from the off, Hendry with a smile on his face, getting into the face of CJ Banks. And you can see the Banks, Dave, he doesn't like it one bit.
Now referee Chris Sharp, one of the most experienced referees on the planet, he's got a job on here to contain the anger of CJ Banks, who wants to get hold of Hendry from the get-go.
What a match this is going to be right here on Loaded. We talk about opportunities. Hendry, his entire life has been about seizing opportunities. Well, now the shoe is on the other foot because CJ Banks, as you say, Bradshaw, his very first singles match right here in Defiant Wrestling.
All right, Banks and Hendry lock up at the start of a big night here on Loaded. Of course, coming up later on, that rematch from last week. Robbie X and Sean Custom going to go one-on-one again. What a match that was last week.
Oh, absolutely amazing. But listen, look at the physical shape that Hendry is in right now, dominating the early portion of this match. I know it's early, but physically, Hendry at the top of his game.
You see how hard he took down Banks there. Banks is trying to get out of this wrist lock. Good counter from Banks. These are two guys who, of course, do know each other from their time on WOS Wrestling on ITV last summer, so they are not strangers to each other by any means. Banks, indeed, has been around the UK scene for a number of years, well over a decade now, as Hendry goes for an early cover, and Banks, such a no-nonsense competitor. He has had success throughout the Northwest, where he's based, but also further afield.
Well, CJ Banks physically, we talk about Hendry, or specifically, I talk about the prestigious one in the physical shape of his life, but CJ Banks comes into this with a point to prove, and that could be so crucial here tonight on Loaded.
Well, obviously Hendry with the headlock takedown here, and the question for, not just for Hendry, not just for Banks, but for so many of our talents here in Defiant, after the No Regrets Rumble is what do they do now?
Well, I was impressed by CJ Banks in that Rumble. Personally, I really was, but one-on-one competition here in Defiant Wrestling, it's something different altogether.
Well, we will be talking more and more, I'm sure, about the fallout from all of No Regrets, not just the Rumble, but the entire event next week here on Loaded in much more detail. Hendry again has taken Banks down with a shoulder block here. Banks goes for the clothesline. Sent to the ropes, Hendry with the high knee right into the upper chest of CJ Banks.
Now, much like millions of people around the globe, I have watched CJ Banks on national television, and it has been broadcast worldwide. Oh,
there's a cover from Banks, and a kick out by Hendry, but you see the viciousness of Banks there as he drives his forearm into the face of Hendry.
that's exactly what I was going to say, Bradshaw. This man brings it every single time he's in that wrestling ring. He brings it, and that's going to be a huge challenge for Joe Hendry.
A knee right between the shoulder blades from Banks. Uppercut, very methodical in his delivery of punishment is Banks, and Hendry is having a fight back hard here. You can see that Hendry was rattled by a couple of those strikes from Banks. Banks has got Hendry in the corner now. And Banks takes him down, uses the boot to rake the eyes of Hendry.
There's the viciousness that you speak of. CJ Banks with the stomp right on the fingers of Hendry. Oh, and that knee right to the spine.
Oh, and you see how he twists the neck, wrenching it to the right-hand side. He tries that chin lock.
And this live crowd trying their able best to get right in the corner of the prestigious one. But CJ Banks, Dave, there's something about this man. He looks so focused.
There's an uppercut from Hendry. That might knock his focus out. He'll be seeing double after that. Banks with a headbutt right into the abdomen of Hendry. And a snap suplex from Banks. No wasted motion, straight on top for the cover. Didn't hook the legs, and Hendry kicks out on two. Oof. That suplex reminded me a lot of the late great Dynamite Kid, whose presence, of course, is always felt here in Defiant through his nephews. But Banks came from a very similar part of the world, trained in Wigan, just down the road.
Listen, Joe Hendry is not a small man. The power it takes on behalf of CJ Banks to snap the prestigious one over in that suplex, it's phenomenal.
Once more, Banks trying to wear down Hendry. You can see he's cutting off the blood supply, the oxygen supply to the brain. Trying to make Hendry pass out here. The crowd are willing Hendry on.
Oh, and look at this, wearing down the prestigious one.
Yeah, that is smart, because you see he's got his legs wrapped around the midsection, his entire body weight, adding extra pressure to Hendry here. Hendry's having to use all of his body strength.
Uh-oh.
Look at this power from Hendry!
I speak about strength. I speak about physical power. Look at that from the prestigious one. Joe Hendry starting to feel it right here tonight on Loaded.
Crowd are starting to feel it here too. Support for Hendry getting louder and louder. Big elbow into the jaw of Banks. Banks is going to get sent to the opposite corner. No, he's not. Counter from Banks. Here comes Hendry. Slides underneath. And Hendry right on the jaw, followed by the neck breaker. Cover by the prestigious one. Got the left leg hook, but Banks kicks out on two.
Joe Hendry now with a nod of the head. He needs these people behind him. Now, it hasn't always been that way for the prestigious one, but we've seen a change in Joe Hendry. He relishes this support.
Going for the freak of nature, but Banks lands behind him. Good scouting there from Banks. Looking for a German suplex. Arm drag takedown from Hendry. There's so many ways to take you down. That amateur wrestling background comes into play. There is the freak of nature, though. Hendry with the cover of Banks. And Banks kicked out.
Well, Banks going for that uppercut, which worked earlier on in the match. Caught in the freak of nature, but somehow managed to find a way out at the count of two.
Well, Banks is certainly a wily veteran, very resilient, but he's going to be extremely resilient to get out of this. He's in the Hendry lock here, finds a way out. Banks again will look for the German suplex, and this time he nails it.
And there's that power again, deceptive from CJ Banks. A lot of fans might not associate that with this man, but strength is certainly in his locker.
And Banks has pulled down the knee pad. Banks looking to charge knee first into Hendry. Instead, Hendry rolls through, gets the leg again and again into the Hendry lock. Hendry lock, this time cinched in. Even more harder than before. Banks, middle of the ring, nowhere to go. CJ Banks taps out and Hendry's your winner.
Here is your winner as a result of the submission, the prestigious one, Joe Hendry!
Joe Hendry back to winning ways after the no regrets rumble. And Hendry, what is next for that man?
Well, Joe Hendry You know, wins and losses mean so much here. That's one in the W column for the prestigious one.
Hendry with his arms raised high, and Joe Hendry, ever popular here with the Defiant fans in Manchester and wherever we go. But as I asked before, the question remains, what next for the former Defiant world champions?